Alright guys, it's Jerningam here. I've had a long day today. We're going to be watching Boris Johnson's People MPQs full 11 0919. What I'm saying by that is the time of when Boris Johnson did this video. Let's begin anyway.
And over 1 million people watched the last edition, and I think it's a very good thing to bring democracy directly to everybody at home. And it's really great to be speaking directly to so many of you. I worry that people sometimes feel disconnected from politics, and this is a kind of answer. So let's get on with it, and we're going to go first to the questions, which are some pretty tough questions we've got this week, but very, very important questions for our society. First one is from Rosie Downs, who asks about homelessness, and she says, the NHS, education and policing are all important, but equally crucial is making sure everybody has a safe place to call home. Will you commit to putting in place a plan to end homelessness, not just rough sleeping, once and for all? And I can tell you, Rosie, that I totally agree with you. When I was Mayor of London, we had a programme called No Second Night Out, which was designed to end or help with homelessness. It was successful insofar as it went, but let's face it, this is a massive, massive problem for our society. And yes, I will be putting in place both a homelessness SAR and a national plan to deal with the problem. We need to bring together all the agencies, whether it's housing, local councils, social services, the police, everybody who's involved, mental health care services, everybody who's involved with tackling the multiple problems that can cause homelessness and indeed rough sleeping. So believe me, this is one of the priorities, Rosie, of my government. And I'm going to go to the question about the NHS from Ian Chase, who says, can I confirm that my increased budget for the NHS, the government's increased budget for the NHS, will result in real terms extra spending? And the answer is yes. It is profoundly important that we spend on the people's priorities, and that's why I announced another 1.8 billion to go to 20 new hospital upgrades across the country, in addition to the 34 billion that we're spending extra on the NHS. And what we're asking the NHS to do is to make sure that goes to the front line, to doctors, to nurses, to reducing GP waiting times, to reducing the time you have to wait in A&E. And it's going to be hard work. There may be a tough winter ahead, but we're going to work very hard to make sure that funding gets right to the front line. Now, I've got a question here from Emma Hart, who's a university lecturer in Edinburgh, and she asked me, are you anti-democratic? Brexit was designed to take back sovereignty for Britain from an authoritarian EU. How do you explain to the British people that you are now the leader of an authoritarian regime? Why is homegrown authoritarianism better than EU rule? Well, Emma, I must respectfully disagree with you in your characterization of this government. What we're trying to do is implement the result of the 2016 referendum, the largest democratic exercise ever conducted in the history of this country. And I think what is making people a bit fed up in the last 3 years is that the politicians, us, Parliament, has so far failed to implement the people's will. And that is, I think, the real failure of democracy. And, you know, when people say, well, why have you decided to have this Queen's speech, there's a very simple answer to that. We need to push on, as I've just been saying, with measures to improve our NHS, to improve our education, all sorts of things to take forward the people's priorities, putting 20,000 more police on the streets, tackling homelessness. That's what the public, I think, want us to do. But yes, of course, if opposition members of Parliament disagree with our approach, then it is always open to them to take up the offer I made twice, that we should have an election. And there is nothing more democratic in this country than a general election. We've invited them to accept that offer twice, and for mysterious reasons of their own, they have declined. So we will get on, and we will come out of the EU on October the 31st, and we will also get on with delivering on the people's priorities. I'm going to go to Lovey Dillon from Gloucester, who asks a very good question about the negotiations currently going on over the backstop and over the withdrawal agreement. And she says, considering Parliament has blocked no deal, what is the current status of the backstop? Well, Lovey, the backstop is going to be removed, I very much hope. And that is, I insist, because that's the only way to get a deal. The UK Parliament will not accept the current withdrawal agreement. There's no way that is going through. But the crucial thing to understand is that we will not accept, and I've seen a bit of chatter about this, a bit of stuff in the media about this, we will not accept either a Northern Ireland only backstop. That simply doesn't work for the UK. We've got to come out whole and entire and solve the problems of the Northern Irish border, and I'm absolutely certain that we can do that. But we're working very, very hard, flat out, to do that. And Sheila Spence asks a related question. I despair, says Sheila, of what is going on in Parliament. It seems that MPs have all the power, and what people say or vote doesn't matter. I've lost all hope in democracy. And, well, Sheila, all I can say is I'm on your side. We're trying to sort this out. We will sort this out. We will work very hard for a deal in the course of the next few days and weeks, and we're making great progress. By the way, we had some very good talks with Leo Varadkar in Dublin a couple of days ago. I've talked to Emmanuel Macron and Angela Merkel, and the mood is changing. The ice floes are cracking. There is movement under the keel of these talks, and we can do this thing, absolutely. But what we cannot do is fail to honour the commitment that all parliamentarians, or the vast majority of parliamentarians, made to the British people, and that is to come out of the EU on October the 31st and not to extend Article 50. We must get this thing done. And once we've got Brexit done, we can get on with taking this incredible country forward, uniting our country with technology, with infrastructure, and above all, with education. I'm going to go to, well, it's the same sort of question, really. You won't be surprised, from Mark Young, an electrician in Warminster, who says the public have no faith in politics. How will you restore this? Number one, show that we mean what we say by coming out of the EU, deliver Brexit, take the country forward, unite our amazing country, and deliver on our promises and our commitments. And what I want to do is to have fantastic public services paid for and supported by a dynamic market economy. The UK, in my view, is the greatest place to live, the greatest place to bring up a family, the greatest place to start a business, and that's what we want to ensure and to take forward. I'm going to go to, there's the same sort of questions, my goodness. Matthew McNaught from Glasgow, college student. Can you confirm that we will leave the EU on October the 31st, deal or no deal? Well, Matthew, I think I've said that now about 5 times in the course of these brief people's PMQs, and I'm delighted, though, to confirm it again to you right now. Yes, we must leave on October the 31st. I think that's what people want to see. They want to see things dealt with, and then the country to go forward. The next question is from Reese Pierre, who's an assistant who works in Bromley, and Reese says, Prime Minister, if we leave the EU without a deal, what will happen to everyone's jobs? I'm a young student at college and enjoy working in my part-time. Will it affect me? And I want you to know, Reese, that we want a deal, but we also think that this country can manage very well with no deal. And I just remind you, in case it just popped into my head, if we things carry on as they are, and I hope that they very much that they will. We have unemployment now at record lows. We have wage growth at 4% now, the highest it's been for 10 years. What I want is a high wage, low tax economy, and that's the ambition of this government. So I hope, Reece, that you'll who'll be very confident about your job and your future. Louise says, why can't we leave the EU today without a deal? Why wait until the 31st of October? Well, I'm afraid that's because Parliament voted that they had to have a decision on whether or not to approve a deal, and we need to get a parliamentary vote on a withdrawal bill. But if we can't get it, if we cannot get a new withdrawal agreement, then be in no doubt, Louise, that we will leave on the 31st. That's, in fact, I think I just answered in anticipation question from Geraldine, question 11. Are you actually planning to carry out the majority of voters' wishes and leave the EU without a deal, rather than sign us up to a deal that will leave this country in even more debt than it already is? Good point, Geraldine. Don't forget, the longer we stay in the EU, the more money we squander. £250 million every week, pointlessly going to Brussels for every week. The more that we stay in the EU, and think how we could spend that money, Geraldine. £1 billion a month going to the EU. We're spending, this government's spending £1 billion now, roughly speaking, on putting 20,000 police officers on the streets of our country. Let's get our priorities right. Let's come out of the EU on October the 31st and get this thing done. I think that's all we've got time for. No, wait, we've got one more. We've got one more, so I'm going to go to Sir Nicola Ince, who asks a question about the NHS and food.
I've been fucking hoes and popping pillies, man, I feel just like a rock star. Mama got the smoking a rock star.